Hiring the right person is essential. Big businesses understand is you've got to be everywhere all the time. And everywhere, it's physically, it is digitally, it is in the newspaper, it is on the radio.
You got to make sure that you're measuring the right thing.
Explore, learn, live, but really at the same time enjoy.
Our business is word of mouth. Our business is referrals, right? Because it's trust.
If you really want to optimize your website, you have to do blogs and you have to have frequently asked questions.
I got to provide a lot more educational content because that's how you're going to get pulled out of rank. It's not keywords anymore. Now you do have to do the blogs.
As I get to meet business owners, the first thing that comes to mind is not all of them, but most of them are just really overwhelmed.
You've got to have a plan that connects the dots and
Correct.
be realistic about that plan. If you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would it be? Welcome to today's Plan Assist podcast. Now, those of you who listen to this know Plan Assist is not a product. It's not a service. It's not an investment. It's a process built on first principles to help you make financial decisions. And those financial decisions are really built around three questions and helping you answer yes to those three questions. The first one is your lifestyle aligned with your income? The second one is your income diversified and resilient? And then the third one is are you making progress towards the first two, right? So those are kind of the three questions that we build Plan Assist around and helping you answer. The podcast is built to also kind of just leverage that because we interview successful people in the area and just talk about what are they seeing, what are some of the opportunities they see, what are some of the challenges they see as individuals and as small businesses. And today I'm super excited to welcome Mattia. She's the co-founder, or she's the founder actually, and CEO of Digital Universe Marketing Advertising and an Air Force veteran. She's built her business around a simple but powerful idea. When local businesses support each other, the entire community grows. Through a mix of strategies and services, she helps businesses gain visibility with tools like indoor digital billboards, targeting capital campaigns, integrated marketing systems, so kind of a whole marketing process. Her approach is rooted in collaboration, connection, and helping small businesses succeed and thrive. So with that, did I miss anything that you wanted to add?
No, that pretty much covers it all. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So Monica and I know each other from 1 Million Cups. We've met in the Claremont store. So that's become kind of one of my go-tos for getting people that are successful in small businesses to share their story and share their ideas. And as you know, Monica, I always start these podcasts off with the same question. So if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would it be?
Oh goodness. It's such a loaded question, right?
I
And I'm sure
know.
you get all kinds of different responses to that. But I think that as I've gone through so many different experiences and the beauty of being where I am today is I didn't have a direct career route to something I wanted to do. I didn't have a dream as a child of I want to grow up to be an entrepreneur or I want to grow up to be a doctor. I want to grow up to, join the military. Like I just didn't have that. What I did have as a child was a drive for wanting to be someone and do something with my life. Whatever success, right, equated at the time in my young, immature mind was
Yeah.
what I was going after. And so that led me through a series of decisions that really opened up all of these different doors for what I have today as my career or what I have done, because I've done a lot of different things. So I think if I could go back and say, what advice would I give myself would be open to the opportunities, be courageous, explore, learn, live, but really at the same time enjoy. I feel like I didn't enjoy the journey as much as I could have. I'm finding out today that there's a lot more enjoying the journey than there is in heading to the destination and being so focused. I think I had my eyes set on whatever success was going to be like, that I forgot to really kind of look around and be part of the journey, be part of the people that were around me cheering me on, supporting me, giving me advice, even the challenges. There's
Yeah.
so much that you can really take away from that. So I think that would be something that I would change. I wouldn't change the journey. I would change being more present in the
Yeah.
journey, if that
That,
makes sense.
that totally makes sense. That's a really good kind of way to start the call. So just give a brief overview. Did you go into the Air Force right after high school? Is that what you did, or did you go to
I did
college?
not. No, no, no. So actually, I knew that I wanted to go to college. My mom could not afford to help me get there. She was a single mom of three. We struggled a lot in our childhood. She was working two, three jobs at a time to just make ends meet.
Uh,
We really grew up, not having a lot. So I think that was my drive, is I wanted my life to be different than my mom's, not because she did anything wrong, but because she did her best with what she had, but she didn't have the education, the background, the resources to help her be better or get better, right? So I knew that college was not an option, but how I was going to get there and how I was going to pay for it was kind of the question. So I ended up putting myself through school. I also was working two jobs while going to school part time. It took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree. And, there's a lot of pressure, I think, sometimes for college students to feel like they got to finish in 4 years, which I think is impossible depending on the degree. But also, it's okay if it takes you a little bit longer. It's okay if you have to, pivot from what you originally thought you wanted to do into something else. And so, because it took me 7 years, I ended up, working in for a mortgage company that entire time that I was there. So working full time, going to school part time, already learning a lot of things about the corporate world that I didn't know in that role. And so after I graduated, what I originally got my degree for was to be a social worker. So my degree is in child and family development. And when I found out how much social workers make, I thought, that's not really in line with my vision of success. I wanted to make more money. So the options were I did Air Force ROTC when I was in college. And so I thought, I loved it. I loved everything about the military. I loved the structure. So I decided to apply for officer training school after I graduated from San Diego State. And I got in. I got sent to officer training school in August of 2001. So it was shortly after 9/11. And yeah, I did 10 years. I ended up becoming a missile officer. So I was in charge of the nation's nuclear weapons, which is something that, first of all, I didn't even know we had. Second of all, I didn't even know that I was capable of doing something that technical. So it really opened up my eyes to the possibilities, but also really built up my confidence in that I can learn it. I can do it. I can, at
so,
that
so,
point it was just I can do anything.
so what caused you to get out? You don't find people with 10 years. Usually it's
Yeah.
4 years or 20.
Right, right. Yeah, I was right at that point where if I had been 11 or 12, I would have stayed. So at that time, I had my boys were young. I have two boys. They were 3 and 8 years old. And I was, before we weren't really deploying. At that time, we were right in the middle of, a war. So I was told that I was going to have to deploy for a year, be away from my boys. And then I was going to come back and I was going to get sent to Minot, North Dakota to take command of that unit. Well, we had already spent 5.5 years in Minot, and I didn't align with that vision
I
of,
see.
and,
So
and
it's
I
kind of
it,
next step. It just didn't.
right. It was like, okay, is this the time? Is this the time? And I loved it. I loved being in the military, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice any more than I
Yeah.
already had for 10 years. And so I made a decision to get out.
So have you ever spent any time well, you're in marketing. So I was in a part of marketing. Part of my career was in an executive, had a marketing group who report to me. And one of the funny things that you just said was the cities you always use as an example is Minot, North Dakota. Do you know that? Do you ever hear people say it? It's true in New York and it's true in Minot, North Dakota. Huh?
I
Have you
have not actually.
you
That's the
have
first
it?
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just hear
Oh
the
my
why not,
gosh.
why not?
I can't tell you. I probably heard it 100 times. And different marketing firms would come in, like the big marketing firms, and they're like,
Yeah.
because that's the one that they compared, like the small city to the
Oh,
big
yeah.
city, right? And then everything in between. So that's how it actually came about.
Okay,
So
gotcha. It makes sense.
yeah. So, I mean, so that was the whole idea. You're the first person I've ever met that's from Minot, but I've heard the word and heard the city so many times. It's funny. So
Yeah.
and so from a business perspective, you do work with primarily small to mid-sized businesses. Is that right?
Correct.
Is that
Yes.
kind
Yeah.
of your
That's
main,
our target
that's your
audience.
main
Yeah.
target? So what are you seeing as some of their challenges, some of the opportunities, both challenges and opportunities? So just talk to me a little bit about what, when you sit down with someone, what do you see as their kind of number one or two challenges?
Yeah, so there's a lot actually. As I get to meet business owners, the first thing that comes to mind is not all of them, but most of them are just really overwhelmed. They are working a lot. They're working in their business, not necessarily on their business, and that's a huge challenge, especially as a small business owner. They working a lot of hours in their man. They're wearing a lot of hats. They're managing a lot of things, and because they're managing a lot of things they're not getting done. All of those things are not necessarily getting done to 100% potential because we just don't have that capacity, right? We are only one, we're only human, and when we're wearing a lot of hats, we try to dabble into a little bit into each one just to keep it afloat, but not really maximizing. So when I come in and I talk to a business owner about marketing, what I find is a lot of them are really not informed. They really don't have a lot of knowledge and background about how marketing really should work, what types of marketing we have out there. So when I inform people about, the nuances of like Google Business Profile and everything that it requires for it to really work, the things that Google are looking at to really rank your business higher, they're like, oh, I had no idea, right? They think just creating a Google Business Profile with your business name on it and getting some reviews is enough. And it really isn't. They don't understand a lot of times the links between how your website should maximize your search engine optimization. And now I'm glad we're getting into the topic of AI because that is also now a huge part of how people are going to find you. But a lot of business owners don't understand it. They don't have knowledge, and frankly, some of them don't really want to learn it. There's so much happening that they're just like, I can't. I don't have the bandwidth and the capacity to learn or to understand something more.
And,
So what we try to do is kind of take that weight from a marketing perspective, take it off of their plate
yeah.
if they're willing and wanting to have someone be an expert at running their marketing for them and they don't have to worry about it.
So so that's primarily, it sounds like the solo person, right? They don't have other people in their business or
Not necessarily. I work with restaurants that have people working for them that are still struggling because they don't have the right people in place. They have people that don't show up to work, and just the different dynamics in having different generations working, the mindset of work ethic, the mindset of what kind of work people are willing to do nowadays,
right.
whether they want to work nights, evenings, weekends, all of that. So it's not necessarily a solopreneur. It is also evident in businesses that are small, but they have people working for them.
Right.
Yeah.
They just don't have the capacity or the revenue in their business to hire someone to be the operations manager as an example, right? Obviously they don't have a marketing person, but the person that you would typically talk to would be that person that's in operations, right? I
Correct.
mean,
If they don't
it,
have a marketing, yeah.
it
Yeah.
would be a typical natural for the ops
Right.
manager would be responsible for the website, the keyword,
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, yeah. And so, and even if they do, let's say they do have the capacity to hire somebody, hiring the right person is essential. No one's ever going to love and be passionate about your business as much as you, right? They don't have the same mindset because they don't have the same level of risk and care for what you built and what you're trying to build. So I think always hiring someone it's never going to be, no one's ever going to have the same passion that you are for your business, but hiring someone that is, that does have, drive and good work ethic and people skills and leadership skills and, even being able to problem solve. Like there's a lot of um,
Challenges, yeah.
challenges with that.
And and some businesses, now my business doesn't have the same level of marketing needs. Okay. Now there'll be people who disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But our business is word of mouth. Our business is referrals, right? Because it's trust. It's not we need to have some brand out there. That's one of the reasons I do this YouTube channel and I don't really talk about investments, but it's not so much to get a client from these YouTube or
Mhm.
from anything that I put out there. It's more so that when that event occurs, they think of me or they come talk to me, right? So my point is advisors don't have the same live and die on marketing that say a restaurant does is a really good example, right? I mean, a restaurant better be doing a ton of marketing. I mean, there's some service businesses, cleaning houses and, some of those businesses, they need lots of marketing, right? Because their clients are constantly rotating through.
Yeah, and that could be true. However, what I will say is there are some basic fundamentals that no matter what your business is, you really should be thinking about and you should have in order for your business to have the foundation that it needs to earn the trust of a prospective customer. Because even if you're going off of referrals, I've referred people to friends and they will go and do some research and they're like, I'm just not sure. I'm not 100% sold. They don't really have what I'm looking for. There's still a possibility, right? A percentage of level of uncertainty that a potential customer could have, even if it comes from someone you trust that referred them to you.
No, that's a good
And
point.
yeah, and most of the time, they're always going to want to go and do some research. So, no matter who you are, whether you're a referral being referred by someone you trust or just someone that sees your brand anywhere in the community in any form of advertising, whether it's paper or billboards or anything, the first thing that typically they do is they go to your website, right? They want to go to your website, they want to learn more about your business.
And LinkedIn in
And
financial
yeah,
services.
well, right, yeah.
Those
So,
people
right.
looking
So
for
it's
financial
more than
advisors, those are the two. To your point, they don't go to Facebook, they don't go to X, they don't go, but they do go to LinkedIn and they do go to the website.
the website. And sometimes, depending on the individual, they'll go to your Google business profile because they want to read reviews, right? They want to see what people are saying. So those are all marketing services. You would be surprised how many times I talk to a business when we're talking about advertising and they don't have a website. And I say, it's just not going to be effective because you can advertise and you can get your brand out there and become visible in the community. But people aren't going to look at your brand and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to call them and do business with them. They're going to want to build that trust. And that trust gets built by them seeing your website, seeing your Google business profile, and seeing your social media channels, which includes LinkedIn as being one of them.
Yeah,
They're going to
that's a
want to
good
do the
point.
research and feel a connection with you without meeting you face to face. Once they feel that connection and they feel like there's a level of trust there, then they'll make the call and then they'll make up their mind based on the interaction, right? Whether it's a customer service representative, which is another part of where businesses struggle. We can drive all of the leads to your business, but if you don't have the right people in place answering the phones, providing great customer service, whether it's a service level industry business or a restaurant, right? I can send all kinds of people to go to your restaurant, but if they get bad service, that's not going to help you because now they're going to leave a less than 5-star review. Now they're going to go tell their friends, this restaurant, that the food was great, but the service was awful, or vice versa. So there's still a level of responsibility for the businesses once we drive the marketing to you, the leads to you via the marketing, for you to have the right processes in place and the right people in place to really keep those customers and then turn them into repeat customers, right? That's the goal of every business.
Yeah, what I see constantly, and I do talk to, I have a bunch of friends in businesses. What I see is, to your point, all those things are connected and they seem not to understand how connected they are, right? I mean, so like, and then the other thing that happens that I see consistently, and I try to, help. I'm not a marketing person, but I have friends that do, and I try to help them kind of understand this is they're measuring the wrong thing. They're okay, I do this ad, how many clients did I get? I said that's really not that's just one data point. So I'm not telling you you shouldn't pay attention to it, but you got to make sure that you're measuring the right thing. So for me as an example, I need to have a good clean website. I need to have a good LinkedIn. If someone goes and does, they can't do Google reviews. Financial services, you can't have customer reviews. It's not you without a lot of hassle, which I just don't let them have it. So if I can get them to call me just for a conversation, then it's on me, right?
Mhm.
If they're a fit, if they're not a fit, I don't lean on marketing quite as hard as some firms do. But again, I'm a really small practice, right? But if I had a restaurant or I had a plumbing business, I would lean hard on marketing, but I'd make sure that first touch was perfect.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because you only get that one first touch one time, and I'm not
Right.
sure people realize that. And then the last thing that I would kind of just touch on is it's so fascinating to me how once a client becomes a client, they don't have really tight client processes, right? To make sure that client stays a client, right? Like whether they realize it or not, the client service experience is Amazon.
Hmm.
It's Amazon. Like they'll say, "Oh, I don't compete against Amazon." I say that's true. You don't
Yeah.
compete directly with Amazon, but you do subconsciously. So clients, if they come and buy something, they expect an email that says, "We got your order." They expect your orders coming in 3 days. They expect your orders out today. Those are like little touch points
Hmm.
that people don't running a small business, they don't realize that they're actually competing against that service, right? No matter what
Right.
it is. Like I just bought a door, right? Like for our the back of the house, a sliding glass door. Our sliding glass door got messed up, and they're not very good at it, right? They don't. Okay, we're coming out in 2 days, and then 3 days, 5 days later, here's a follow up, and
Mhm.
then 8 days later, here's a follow up. They don't realize that I'm measuring them against my Amazon experience.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that customer experience is everything. So and that's one of the many challenges that businesses have in general, right? Is first of all, creating the level of trust for someone to even give you a chance
That's right.
to to look
Call
at your
you.
business.
That's right. Call
Right.
you, come to a meeting, come to whatever,
Exactly.
some
Right. Set up a
interaction.
call, anything.
Right.
Yeah. And then the next level is how do they feel about that interaction after, right? They actually are engaging you. And
Right.
depending on the business, how do they feel about the experience? And so that's why I say like customer service, it feels sometimes like it's a thing of the past. When you call, you make a phone call and you get a customer service rep on the other line that just, answers the phone with a very negative tone and already is defensive, or you're calling to ask, about a complaint about something, and they get defensive and they're trying to justify their actions. And yeah. So Amazon, to your point, you want to return something, they're like, okay, here you go. Send it here, 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 and you don't have to pay, and we'll give you a refund as soon as we receive it. I mean, it's just so seamless. No, almost like very little, friction in the process, in the
And
experience,
lots of communication, right?
and
The
lots of
piece,
communication.
lots and lots of communication. Like my clients, I send a weekly email out on kind of what's going on with their accounts. And I talked to some of the advisors who've been in the business. They're like, yeah, that's ridiculous. You can't send it out that much. And I said, you have to send it out that much in 2026 because
Yeah.
that's what they expect.
Right.
But people can't, they don't say you're competing against Amazon's my point. I just want to kind of drive that point home. They don't even realize you're competing against Amazon, right? But
Hmm.
but in
Right.
their
Oh, yeah.
brain, they
Right.
have kind of, well, what's good service look like? And then you, no matter what their service they're doing, they're putting it against that feel. So one of the things that I find interesting that I would just, if you ever bump into someone that's doing something like this, is I think that like a small business mastermind, and there's different variations of this kind of on. I was actually part of one 5 or 6 years ago, but I think if you could get five, six, seven, 10 small businesses together and talk about that, if you just spent the first 6 months talking about all the steps, right? Like going
Yeah.
back to the old clients, et cetera, right? Because it's what happens to small businesses because I'm one, you know what I mean? So we'll have a tendency to engage with you, but you're the front end part of the client service model, right? So I'll spend money with you, I'll spend time with you, I'll have a conversation about that. Well, that's all right. And that is important, right? But then there's okay, well, what happens when you finally get a client to call me? And then there's that section, right? It's that,
Yeah.
okay, do we do a meeting? Do we do a Zoom call? What's that look like?
Right.
And then once you bring them on board, there's a whole, okay, then how are you servicing them as clients, right? And each one of those are critical.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so interesting because in the beginning you kind of gave the description of what our mission is, and kind of how we feel about centering our business around collaboration
Uh,
and businesses working together. So I just recently did a collaboration with another individual in our networking group that is talking about, DISC assessments. So personalities, right? So the four different personalities that we have in the world, and we were able to link that to, well, how do you market to each different personality, because that's another level of understanding, right? Besides the fact that you've got to take care of the customer and provide a great experience. But now you're dealing with an individual one-on-one. Well, that individual may not receive information the same way as another individual. And so there could be a lot of disconnect in that communication based on that alone. So it's such a fight, it's such a struggle. First, we got to get the people in, then we got to figure out how to provide a great experience, and then we got to figure out if they communicate, if they're direct communicators, if they're more sensitive communicators, if they're intuitive, if they're compliance based, where they want just all the facts, they need to see all the details. Not everybody is the same way. And so I loved doing that collaboration because it really opened people's eyes to understanding it's not just about your marketing and sales, but it's just your day-to-day communication in anything, in relationships and networking events. If how you come across with how you're communicating to someone that is not receiving that communication the same exact way that you are intending it, could really create a great partnership, a great level of trust quickly, or the other way around, right? Where they're like, I don't know, there's something was off.
So just a little bit of a rabbit hole, but kind of to bring that point home. At one point, I had 7 regional managers reporting to me, and they were all over the country. Okay, so I would do my weekly calls, and then this goes to that DISC thing. We called it Kobe. We used something called Kobe, Kathy Kobe's analysis, but same thing, right? Same kind of personality process. And
Yeah.
what I had one person that reported to me where we were just always just at odds. Okay, it wasn't that we didn't get along. We just were just constantly like, it was just painful, right? Conversations and, you could we just weren't connecting. And we did that Kobe exercise, which is similar to DISC. And
Yeah.
one thing that came back was of all 7 of them, only one was massively numbers driven, was metrics, data driven, I guess is the way they worded it, right?
Yeah.
Where the
Yeah.
rest of them were not data driven. They were more feely, they were more general, et cetera, right? Well, my leadership style is more general. Okay. It even is with current clients, right? But once I understood that he was really numbers driven, I had all the numbers. I just didn't share them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because to the other 6, it was like, seriously, you're overloading me. I don't need that much stuff. Just give me summaries, right? But he needed all that stuff. And once I understood that, it changed everything. It changed our
Hmm.
whole working relationship. I mean, it was
Right.
interesting because I just started sending him, like if we were rolling something out and it had all these, a 30-page deck and a 5-page summary, I'd send the 5-page summary to the 6 and I'd send the 30-page deck to him. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden he felt like he, had awareness or a little more knowledge, you know what I mean? Because people do have very specific personalities that you have to match if you're going to keep them as good clients in the communication.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we struggle as humans sometimes to really collaborate and to be open-minded and to be willing to just cross network with one another because of the communication. The
Yeah.
communication styles are so different. We don't have time to really think about how can I better communicate to someone else. We always think about, well, the way that I communicate, people just have to be okay with that. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't, right? And so we struggle with, figuring out how to connect sometimes with people. I have, a lot of instances, even in setting up the digital billboards and TVs. And when I go in and talk to a business, I've had several business owners tell me, I love the concept. I agree with it. I think it's great, but I am not going to advertise someone else in my business. And I said, well, even if they're non-competing, it's a non-competing business. And they're like, yeah, no, I'm not advertising anyone else. And so there's this idea of like, everything is me, right? I'm here for myself. I want to protect what I have. There's a fear of, someone else coming in and stealing my business away, even if it's non-competing business. And so I've had a really hard time in the last year and a half trying to understand why people feel that way, why they feel so threatened or unwilling to cross network and collaborate. And then there's a whole other, level of, oh, absolutely, which is all, fortunately, the clients that I've been able to find, the 14 locations that I've been able to find so far that are so open and like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I don't mind it. And wait, and you're going to at the same time advertise me and their business? And I'm like, yeah, that's why it's a cross collaboration. You guys are advertising each other because you're non-competing businesses. And they're like, oh, that's great. And so it's both ends of the spectrum. And I have yet to understand and figure out why some business owners are very open to collaborating and cross networking, and others are absolutely not
Yeah.
at all.
And it does come down to just personality types and
Yeah.
what they think. And so, I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So let's transition to AI. So what are you seeing when you're going into these businesses? How many of them are I assume all of them, I want to set this up a little bit. So I assume all of them are using AI to some degree, and they all think if you ask them, they're using it, but are they really using it? That's kind of
Right.
my question, right? So I'll sit down with people and they'll say, yeah, I'm using it. And I'm like, okay, you're using it for what? Spell checking, for, doing an email, but are you really using it to add, productivity gains to your business? Or are you just using it as a Google to the 10th power, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so the answer is yes, I'm using AI, but that doesn't, the continuum is so wide. Everyone's using it differently. What are you finding? What are you personally finding?
I'm personally finding that there's actually a lot of people that are not.
Not
Well,
using it at all, not even
not
using it.
well, or not using it, like to your point, like really using it, maybe using it to send emails or to create posts for social media. But that's kind of the extent of what I've seen. Um, and of course I deal with a lot of different industries, right? Restaurants, barbershops, nail salons, insurance agencies, cleaning companies. And so their ability to be open to how they can utilize it, I don't think it's there yet. I have a hard time still even trying to get business owners to understand the difference between what is a regular search engine, traditional search engine, and what are customers using now that is AI specific search engines, and how that is still linked together, and how it's important for you to know the difference and know how to implement your website, your social media, your Google business profile into making sure that your business is found not only on the traditional search engine, but also on the AI. And so a lot of people forget or don't even understand and realize that what used to be, I'm going to type into Google or Yahoo, whatever I'm searching for, now is being spoken into, right? It's say, hey, Alexa, I want to know what is the best financial firm in Claremont, or, hey, Gemini, can you tell me, where is the best place to get a burger in, this radius? And so people are not making those connections, that those are the AI engines that people are utilizing nowadays that require a different level of understanding on how you expose your business to the digital footprint. It used to be that when you would just go to google.com and search something, or Yahoo, it was really just Google that was optimizing the searches and only using really their Google business profile platform to rank businesses. Well, now because the footprint is so large, in order for them to be able to differentiate the businesses, they're going out into the internet and they're saying, all right, has what business has the biggest footprint based on this particular search? And that's where you mentioned keywords. That's where those keywords come in. And they're grabbing everything that is out there on the internet that has your business name tied to it, that's specific to those keywords, and they're processing it, and that's how they're ranking businesses today.
And how much, and again, I don't know this, so I do use AI a lot, but so I don't want to say I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't. When you leverage something like Perplexity, right? Especially Perplexity, but Perplexity, Grok. I mean, like I have a Tesla, right? So I use Grok all the time, right? I mean, so I'm in Tesla and it's just on my dashboard,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's easy.
So what I try to do as a small business owner is I think I got to provide a lot more educational content, because that's how you're going to get pulled out of rank. It's not keywords anymore. It's now you do have to do the blogs. Even if only 10 people read the blogs, one of those 10 people might be Grok. Correct? I mean, so all of
Correct.
a sudden you've now not no, you didn't not 10 people read it, a million. So you have to have very, very thoughtful educational, not salesy, but educational kind of process. That's why when
Yeah.
and that's where I went down this whole plan assist. So I've been working on that for 7 or 8 years, but I constantly keep refining. I need plan assist to be really tight, where someone explains what it is. Well, we answer 3 questions, right? It's, do you live within your means? Do you Is your income resilient and diversified? And are you making progress, right? That's the kind of thing that can catch in an AI model that wouldn't get caught up in Google 5 years ago.
Correct. Yeah. And the keywords are still important
No,
because,
exactly.
yeah, the keywords need to be embedded into those blogs and into those training, videos or, I mean, all of that. So, I mean, you hit on a point that I try really hard to get customers and business owners to understand that optimization, that search engine optimization or AI optimization is so huge now that you really need to set your business up for success for to be competitive because right now most businesses are not competitive because they're not doing all of those things. The
And it
ones that
takes
are,
years, right? And I mean,
it does.
that's the piece that people keep missing. And Google, back in the day, because I was part of it, back in the day, I could get my Google business really cleaned up and tight and make real progress in a month, 90 days, right? Today, that's like a year, 2 year, 3 year progress, right? If you're looking at AI, that's
it,
not something that just happens overnight.
it can be done sooner, but it's definitely not in a month or 6 months. Now it takes 6 months to 12 months to train the algorithm to really recognize your business if you are consistent in doing all of the things that you're supposed to do, the blogs, the frequently asked questions. So let me give you a couple of examples. If you really want to optimize your website, you have to do blogs and you have to have frequently asked questions. Now, the blogs, to your point, it can't be just one or two sentences or even paragraphs. It has to be really a lot of educational material where you're embedding intentionally those keywords that you think customers might be searching for. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, but you're providing all of your service information in there, hoping that one of those keywords or two or three or four are what they're looking for, and that's how you're going to populate. That's one area, one service. The second one is your Google business profile. So most people don't know that you can actually do blogs on your Google business profile. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
You can do blogs there too, but you have to, again, you have the ability and the opportunity to really embed some great information in there. It's not a one or two sentence blog. Google actually does give you quite a bit to ability to write blogs in there for you to maximize again those keywords. Third thing is, we are so used to thinking on our social media posts that, oh, I don't want to put a long post out there because no one's going to read it. You're right. The attention span, unless you have a really good hook and the rest of it is really intentional and interesting, most people are not going to read a long post. But you know what? It's not about that. It's about how is the optimization of the engine finding you based on additional information that you have embedded into the internet via all of the different ways that you can embed it. So whether it's Instagram, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Facebook, if you have that footprint out there, the more footprint you have, the more likelihood of Google ranking your business higher. And again, that takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes optimization and really knowing what you're doing and what you're putting out there to really be competitive in that footprint
Yeah.
nowadays.
And what I find in the financial services business that like if I get a referral, I have quite a few blogs, but because what you just said, I understood 5 years ago when AI started to come out, or at least I thought I did. And I have found that it goes back to trust and it goes back to credibility. So you have to have like you think, okay, well, I'm not, it takes, whatever, 2 hours to write a blog. Well, you don't realize that if you do one, probably not a big difference, but if you do five, now you're starting to make a difference. But if you do
Mhm.
50 over the course of a couple years, now all of a sudden, if a client's doing research on you, they'll find one of those blogs that will interest them, right? I mean, all of a sudden they'll say, "Oh, I see it's fraud control. I want to see what he says on that. I
Yeah,
want to see what he says." So it's kind of like sharing your opinion, but again, I know keywords are important, but it comes down to even broader than that with AI, right? It's
yeah.
it's kind of more your view of a particular subject. Even your
It
voice comes down into the subject, right? I mean, it's
yes.
big.
It is, and it depends on what the customer is searching for, right? If they're searching for information versus if they're searching for specifics on a service, right? Or a like what is, the best fish and chips in town or something like that, right? So I think it
Correct.
depends on what the actual search is, the intent of the search is. But this is where it's so important for especially newer business owners to really wrap their minds around the importance of consistency early on. You are competing with businesses that may, even if they've been in business 5, 10, 15 years, I'm competing with marketing firms that have been in business in Claremont for over 10 years. If those firms have been really consistent about doing all the things we're talking about with their Google business profile, with their website and all of that, it's gonna be challenging for me to really beat them initially. But the consistency of continuing to put the posts out there, to put the blogs, to put the keywords, to really understand how you're optimizing now, not just your search engine, but the AI part of it, then now you're going to have a fair chance of being competitive, right? But to your point earlier, that takes time. And most business owners want immediate results. If I'm paying for a service, and I'll tell you, even Google Ads, a lot of people think that if you're putting Google paying for Google Ads out there, that because you're paying for it now, you're going to have immediate lead generation, and that's not always the case. It depends on the service. It depends on the company, right? What business you're is using it, how they're using it, who they're targeting. But with Google, the more money you put into ads, the more beneficial the leads are going to be. If you're only spending like $500 a month, you're not going to be as likely to get something. And you're also not going to benefit if that is all that you're doing. I have a lot of business owners that want to go right into purchasing Google Ads, and they don't have their website optimized. They don't have their Google business profile optimized, and they're not doing anything on social media. And so I really need to be honest with them. And it's almost like they don't want to hear it. I just had this situation happen where I'm explaining to a customer that wants to do Google Ads, a multi-channel campaign, because you don't have these things optimized, is going to be the best result. And that individual said, I'm really just looking for a Google Ads expert. I just want to do Google Ads. And so even when you try to explain and try to give them the data and the information, sometimes they're just set in their ways and they just want to do what they want to do. And it breaks my heart because they're going to waste their money,
Yeah, no,
if they're
exactly.
not doing it right.
And my when I give my opinion or set something in, I come at it more like you're a professional marketing person who helps broad businesses. When I'm sharing my opinion, I'm sharing it as a professional, right?
Mhm.
That's a very different group, right? So if you're a lawyer, a CPA, a financial advisor, you're not no one's going to get on Google and say, hey, I want a financial advisor. I'm sorry. People say that they do not. Okay. That is not because you pick a financial advisor based on an event in your life. You pick a
Mhm.
lawyer based on an event in your life, right? I mean, those are like events. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying that if you're going to build your business as a professional via Google Ads, it's possible. I mean, because Morgan and Morgan kind of has, so I don't want to say it's not possible. You just need to be prepared to spend an enormous amount of money to do it, right?
Well, and
It's not going to happen at $200 a month.
right, no, and even someone like Morgan and Morgan, they're established. So they already have an enormous footprint in the digital space that
Enormous, like they're
enormous
everywhere, right? I mean,
everywhere, and they've been everywhere for years. Dan Newlin is another example I use all the time. I'm like, everyone here knows who he is because he has t-shirts in the gym. He has people wearing his t-shirts everywhere because he gives them away, right? And that is the level of marketing that big businesses understand is you've got to be everywhere all the time. And everywhere, it's physically, it is digitally, it is in the newspaper, it is on the radio. And when you get to a level where you have the financial backing to be able to do that, you're more likely to be successful and keep those leads coming because you're everywhere, right? You're recognized. It is the ones that are not there yet that have to understand how to methodically and strategically build
And,
something
and they got to get
consistent.
there. So what they got to do, and those of you, if you're listening to this, is what we're saying is I want to summarize kind of what you're saying because again, you're a marketing person and I'm more like a small business person. So one of the things that people have to understand, I'm starting a business. You have cash flow, you have expenses, you have products, you have clients you have to pay attention to. All those are very, very important. You have to add a marketing strategy that has longevity attached to it, that's attached to all the parts of the business, right? it's not a singular piece. It's not, I'm going to go run Google ads and then I'm going to go off and run my business and wait for people to call me, because even the people that call you is still 1 in 5 that's going to become a client. I mean,
Right.
so, and then there's time to talk to the other four. Right. I mean, so I mean, I grew up in financial services business. I can tell you, like, leads were horrific sometimes. Where you're like, why
Yes.
am I even calling these leads? I'd spend 2 hours calling people, and they wouldn't even answer the phone. They didn't call me
Right.
back. You know what I mean? So it's more complicated. I just want to kind of summarize. It's not. We're not sitting here telling you what not to do or do. What I'm trying to say is, you got to have a plan. It goes to my point about, you've got to have a plan that connects the dots and be
Correct.
realistic about that plan. And then when you're interviewing someone like Monica, you're looking for some specific skill set, but you kind of get what you're wanting out of her, right? I mean,
Right.
and you have a budget that supports, whether it's you or some other person, it doesn't matter. Like, if someone's hiring a financial advisor, I'd say I'm a little less money than most financial advisors, but not much. I mean,
Hmm.
you wouldn't hire me based on money, right?
Right.
But if you don't have any money or you want to spend nothing, you're not going to hire any financial advisor, so don't interview us.
Right. The biggest misconception, I think, with businesses and marketing is they want to grow their business, but they don't want to spend money on marketing. And you're just like, that's not a formula for success. It can be, but it's going to take a lot of years. Right? I've had business owners to tell me, oh, I don't market, I just go by word of mouth. And I'm like, that's great, but that's going to take a long time depending on the business, right?
10 years,
Um,
like
yeah,
literally. I'm not, I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah. Long time is not a year. Long time
no,
is
10 years,
years.
decades. And
Yes,
so it
yes,
is possible that you have to understand that. And as
yeah.
long as you understand that,
And you're okay with
again,
it.
and you're okay with it, and then you keep your expenses well under control, and again, it goes back to, is your lifestyle aligned with your expenses?
Yes,
That doesn't just mean personal, that's a business as well,
business.
right? Is
Yeah,
your business's kind of monthly expenses, aligned with the income piece, right? I
right,
mean,
right.
I think that's the
Yeah,
good.
good stuff. I love it.
So, would you want to summarize how people get a hold of you? That was fantastic. I appreciate it. So why don't you summarize kind of how people get a hold of you and
Absolutely.
how to
Yeah.
reach
So
out?
a couple of different ways. If they want to email us, they can email us at explore at digitaluniverse ad, and that's AD for like advertising.com. Or they can call or text us at 352-734-3777. We do have our website, which is digitaluniversead.com. And we are on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. So all of those profiles are linked to our website and are linked on our Google business profile as well. So thank you for that, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and look forward to the next Plan Assist podcast.
Yes.